Welcome to Startup Spokane, where hosts Steve Traben and Megan Halsey explore the excitement and momentum growing throughout Spokane's expanding startup community. Startup Spokane is a joint effort between Greater Spokane Incorporated's Startup Spokane, our friends at Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Megan.
Welcome to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online. We're your podcast home for everything startup and entrepreneurship related in the Spokane region. We're your hosts, Steve Traben and Megan Halsey, and today we are going to share lots of information with you about a particular project that we'll get to here in a minute. But first, Startup Spokane is a program of Greater Spokane Incorporated, and we want to provide you with our region's story of entrepreneurship and educate you on the resources that can help you launch or grow your business. So Megan, without further ado, we're going to talk about an initiative in 2018 called Mind to Market that we actually featured on a podcast last year. And like every great entrepreneurial story, we made, what did we make?
We made a pivot.
We did make a pivot. So do you want to bring everyone up to speed on kind of where we were a year ago and kind of what the big significant pivot was?
Well, it's actually, Steve, it's actually only a few months ago.
Oh, really? It feels like a long time ago.
I think it was probably as late as August or so, where we were talking with the universities, and we'd invested a significant amount of time with our local universities talking about how we could bring latent IP into the market and using that as the cornerstone for the Mind to Market program, with the idea of identifying some entrepreneurs to help carry those ideas forward. But as we got deeper into the project, we realized that you've got to have a champion who's well-versed in the idea, the technology, and is passionate. And without that champion, the latent IP ideas weren't going to work.
And there's a reason why latent IP is latent and sitting on the shelf. And you know, what an aha moment, right?
Yes.
I mean, and it's interesting because the other thing that was really the impetus for this initiative was lack of idea flow in our region. And the funny thing is there really isn't a lack of idea flow in our region.
No, there really isn't.
We have 75,000 students going to our area colleges and universities. We have several research universities right here or in our backyard with researchers and faculty. And again, you know, they're doing research. We have student-generated ideas coming out of school. We have business plan competitions, like 3 of them in our region. We have Startup Weekend Spokane. We have a lot of ideas.
We do. But so instead of focusing on the IP, we decided to focus on the founders. And I think that's the story of Mind to Market moving forward, is identifying the people with fantastic ideas, drive, initiative, capability, vision, but maybe without any money.
Yeah, and wrapping our arms around them, encouraging them, supporting them, guiding them, and mentoring them through a process that would otherwise, for lack of that, they probably would never get it off the ground, or they might try and fail. I mean, right? I mean, we're trying to create a recipe for success, a pathway for success for these folks.
Exactly. And having that ability to get that initial prototype or that MVP created is typically where we find businesses fall off. They just aren't able to move it beyond that, because usually there's a fairly significant price tag attached.
Right. So let's dive right in. I want to talk about the 3 components. I'll list the components, and then I want to come back and talk about what we tested this summer that was really our validation for the model. The first step is really an accelerator kind of model, but not cohort-based. So we have accelerators where a group of entrepreneurs will go through, say, a 13-week program with Ignite as a class. And, you know, they're accountable to the extent they want to be accountable. We've kind of shifted that to a one-on-one intensive coaching model where we'll put them in touch with an entrepreneur in residence, and we'll go in more detail, but in a very short period of time, they'll validate their model or their idea, they'll pivot if it's necessary, or they might even fail. And if they fail, that's okay. You can go back to the drawing board. That's component number 1.
Right.
Component number 2 is that we have a great seed capital investment landscape in Spokane. we don't have a lot of friends and family money at the, you know, 25,
Very early
50,
phase.
75, $100,000 level like they do in Seattle. So we really have this gap. And we thought that if we created an investment fund where we could make somewhere between a $25,000 and $100,000 equity investment into some of these ideas, that would give them enough cash runway to really get to a minimum viable product. And then the third component is, once they have some capital to get going, how do you help them identify their needs and gaps so that they can get to customer traction, a minimum viable product, and a commercially launched business? All those three components make up what is today the initiative Mind to Market. And I think let's dissect it one by one or piece by piece. And Megan, maybe the best way to do that is let's talk about that first piece, which we're calling Rapid Commercialization Sprint today. We actually tested that this summer. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah, we were able to identify 6 different companies who we thought were rife for a little time and energy investment to push them forward. Now, this was an idea. These companies, not all of them had launched. Some of them had. And so what we did is we had an entrepreneur in residence spend almost 2 weeks working, in some cases even a little longer, some cases a little shorter, really deep diving with these companies on their idea, their business plan, their prototype, if they had one, or if not, a plan to move their prototype ahead. They created financial documents, pro formas, and budgets for how they would move forward, and help them create a pitch deck. And a pitch deck, for those of you who don't know, is basically a visual representation of your business, your plan, your model, your projections that you can share with potential investors to get them excited about what you have. And so we had an entrepreneur in residence work very devotedly with those folks, and more importantly, the entrepreneur in residence didn't do all of those things, but he keyed up a number of our subject matter experts who are already within our ecosystem. Those are our office hours providers. There are partners within the community who are already devoted to spending some time and investment with those startup companies already. And we were able to give this to them at no charge, so they were able to really move their businesses further forward. And that's been really exciting.
Yeah, and you know, we debriefed with each one of those 6 companies, and the overwhelming response was it had significant value associated with it. And it really helped us realize that, you know, through intensive one-on-one coaching, you have greater accountability on the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's a much more accelerated process. So you're going to know your end game much more quickly, you know, in 2 weeks than you are going through like a 13, 15-week kind of program.
And
right?
it gives you really significant steps moving you forward.
Yep.
So, for example, 2 of the companies in that process made significant pivots. One identified an entire new line of revenue, and a third realized that they didn't need to fundraise yet because they had enough seed capital to build their prototype. Right. So those were huge, game-changing revelations for each one of those companies, and all 6 of them are still moving forward with their ideas,
right,
which is really exciting for us.
And you know what really, what it led to at the end of that was, okay, now you have six ideas or companies in different stages, all of whom are ready to go to the next level, but they all need, most of them, 5 of the 6, I think,
yes,
need
correct.
capital.
That's right.
Right? And the challenge we ran into was they're not ready for seed capital. They're too early stage.
Too early.
And so it helped us identify this need for what we're calling a pre-seed investment fund. And we've created the Mind Market LLC pre-seed fund, which was set at $825,000, and we've actually raised $750,000 thus far. So we are ready to begin making equity investments into these, in not just the companies that went through the pilot, but into any of the companies or ideas that are coming through our rapid commercialization sprint.
I think this is a great time to talk about how companies come in.
Exactly.
So we had hand-selected the 6 that we worked with this summer, but the idea is that we want to throw the gates wide open. And so companies that think they're interested or think that they have a shot, we want them to contact us at Startup Spokane, and we will start working with you through the Entrepreneurial Assistance Program and help identify identify what you need to do to get yourself ready to potentially become a candidate for that rapid commercialization. And so that's really the first step, is to just come in, let us know you're interested in the program, and set up an individual entrepreneurial assistance meeting. You'll get a chance to talk to me or one of my colleagues, and we will help identify what steps, workshops, and activities you need to be doing to make you ready.
Yeah, and then we have a pool of entrepreneurs in residence. So instead of having a single individual that will single-handedly deal with all of these companies, and this is a continuous process, so we're hoping that, as people or entrepreneurs come in with their ideas, that we can evaluate, vet, get them prepared, and then basically matchmake with one of a handful of entrepreneurs in residence who, based on their own skill sets, that alignment, that fit is really important. It
is really important. And the entrepreneur in residence, in some cases, may be a specialist in mechanics or engineering or things like that. In other cases, if it's like a tech company, we're going to need a different entrepreneur in residence. And so we really are working very hard to identify that.
Yeah. And then throughout this 2-week sprint, these entrepreneurs in residence, again, they're not single-handedly solving everything with the entrepreneur. I mean, we're tapping into a pool of subject matter experts. So as an example, we might bring in an IP attorney to look at, does this particular idea have, can it be protected? Maybe bring in a different type of attorney to look at business formation. We might bring in an accountant
to set that, to make sure their pro forma makes sense and help them establish a plan forward. So if they were to move forward, how much money would they need and how would they use that? Right. Those are really important things, because they need to have a plan, because you're never going to move forward into this process if you don't have a plan for how that money is going to be implemented.
And the entrepreneur in residence is going to take them through a tool called the Lean Business Model Canvas, which is an exceptional way to identify your needs and your gaps, and your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and your threats. Kind of a SWOT analysis, and a very pictorial way to sort of see where you need to focus. And at the end of this sprint, the idea is that if once the idea has been honed in terms of market validation, and we've got a pro forma, we've got a pitch deck, we really want to make recommendations for these entrepreneurs to go before this handful of investors in the Mind to Market LLC fund and get access to some capital.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about how much they can access. The plan is that they can access up to $100,000.
That's right, and we understand in this that that money, the runway of that money is really dependent on the idea. So some of these ideas may only need 25,000.
Yeah.
Others might need 50, 75, or 100. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is provide a cash. Basically a cash runway for them to get to the operations phase, which is the third component, which we're going to talk to right after our break. So let's we'll stop there, take a pause, take a quick break on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online, where Megan and I are unveiling the newly pivoted Mind to Market initiative. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
They say it takes a community to raise a family. It also takes one to build a business. I came to Spokane 12 years ago as a Whitworth student, and I planned to leave after graduation. But the more I got to know this community, the more I wanted to become a part of it. My husband and I have built our business in Spokane, and now we're raising our family here too. We operate a consulting company that provides creative business development strategies. Our approach is holistic and dependent on intentional connections and relationships. And no one understands connections and relationships better than GSI. They direct momentum towards investments in our community, provide resources that help business leaders connect, and they're dedicated and passionate about making Spokane great. GSI gives me the confidence to build my business here because they believe every organization, even a small one like mine, adds big value to our community. With GSI's help, Spokane will be a place my son will want to build his career too. I'm Eva Marquette, owner of Freshview. We're creating something greater with Greater Spokane Incorporated.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
Welcome back to Startup Spokane at Spokane Talks Online, where Steve Traben and I are talking about the newly pivoted Mind to Market project. And we're really excited to be able to start sharing that with our entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. Now, one of the things that we've talked a little bit about what that program looks like, how you get ready for it, and what the funding piece of it looks like. But now we want to talk a little bit about what the operations stage of that looks like. So let's talk about that, Steve.
Yeah, so just quick recap. I mean, entrepreneur comes in with an idea. They go through a very quick 2-week sprint to either validate their idea, pivot, hopefully get it to a point where they can get some pre-seed capital. Now they have that money in hand. This is where the rubber meets the road. We call it the operations phase. And I think this is where, in our research of other accelerators nationwide, this is where people are challenged. These accelerators are challenged in how do they ensure great success with entrepreneurs taking their ideas and getting it to commercialization? So what we've envisioned in our model is that our entrepreneur in residence will continue to have a hand in this. But this is really where needs and gaps are identified for the founders, especially team needs and gaps, right?
Yes. Sometimes they need a technical co-founder. Sometimes they'll need an accountant to really drive some of the revenue models forward and make sure that they can make money doing what they think they're going to do.
Yep, we call it the founder's challenge. Founders often come in with a certain amount of subject matter expertise, but they do not know the end-all be-all to running a business. And so they have to be open and coachable to the idea that you can't do this all on your own. And so the idea is with the vast relationship network that we have through Startup Spokane, that we can help identify not only subject matter experts, but this is the place where we basically identify potential mentors. Yes. And we'll talk about the mentor relationship or partnership that we've established with University of Washington here in a few minutes. But this is where we want to introduce mentorship to the entrepreneur, advisory members to the entrepreneur, and team members to really round out the entirety of their team so that they can use this money and build a go-to-market strategy, begin working on their minimum viable product, which can be a product or a process, basically getting them to the point where they can get customer traction and revenue.
Yeah, that's a great point, Steve. And one of the parts of the funding is that by getting them some cash, they're able to pay some people to do some of those pieces for them. So they can hire somebody to do some accounting work. They can hire an attorney who's going to need to do some maybe IP protection or trademark protection. Those are important pieces of the pie. But we also need to be looking at creating a web of resources that will allow them to take that idea further. And that's the mentor network. So did you want to talk a little bit about our plans for that?
Yeah, I definitely do. So we have already established a mentor network in our community. And I think we have room to really make it even more robust. I think
Absolutely.
Today we have 25 active mentors in our Mentor Connect model. But working with University of Washington CoMotion Labs, who run 3 accelerators in the Seattle area, and a year ago now have boots on the ground in Spokane with a part-time person or resource here. They were looking for how can they enhance their role in the Spokane region. And one of the things that we found in conversation is they have a statewide mentor network of over 150 mentors that allows us to leverage and begin bridging resources across the state.
Yeah, what was really exciting is at the conference we were just at, I was able to meet with some of those mentors and talk to them about how our model is going to work and how they play into that. And they're really excited about that. And we are very confident that with the technology and the resources that we have available, not only at Startup Spokane, but across the state, and many entrepreneurs also have themselves, there won't be much of a challenge to making that technological bridge and making sure they have access to the best expert they need for the particular topic.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make a distinction between a mentor and maybe someone that's like in an advisory role. Mentors don't cost anything up front.
Correct.
Right? So these are people that are giving of their time and their expertise to provide guidance and direction to entrepreneurs and helping them through their journey. Where an advisor, somebody may become part of your advisory board, they may have a different expectation. They might
Correct.
be expecting some form of compensation through, it could be equity, it could be cash, what have you.
Yeah.
Subject matter experts, like a lawyer or an accountant or somebody in marketing, these people are also going to be expecting to be compensated for the work they provide. And at this stage, they should.
Yes.
And so that's where, the pre-seed capital investment can really be of significant value, because this gives founders the opportunity to pay for some of the services that they're going to need to get to commercialization.
Which makes the difference, because a lot of times you get what you pay for, and if you aren't upfront, if you are in need of very specific types of legal advice, it is important to pay the right kind of attorney to get that advice, to make sure that you are moving forward. It'll cost you a lot less in the long run. And a mentor is the kind of person who can give you the advice of, hey, this is an area we want a specialist in. And so there are people who've started their own businesses, who've gone through these processes before, and they are incredible resources. And they may soon become, at a certain point, become a part of your advisor team as well.
That's right. So, what's really exciting about launching and growing a business in Spokane is kind of how long that cash runway can last.
Yeah.
And we've talked in prior segments when we reviewed 2017 that we had our friends at Gonzaga New Venture Lab do a study, and what they found is that startup capital goes 35% further in Spokane than it does in Seattle. So we have very deliberately, with the Mind to Market initiative and model, created a low-cost runway for these startups. We anticipate or expect them to actually operate initially out of Startup Spokane. In the co-working space that Startup Spokane manages, which is a mere $100 a month for an individual, and I know we have team rates as well.
Yep.
We know that their cash goes longer in Spokane than it does in the larger cities. We really are trying to do everything we can to allow them to stretch those dollars out as far as they can, because this operations phase, different than the rapid commercialization, is not bound by any particular timeline other than the cash runway, how long their cash can last.
Right. And so for a lot of these folks, it's going to mean getting the prototypes and the minimum viable products available and out into the marketplace as quickly as possible. And that's part of our goal, too, is to help create the infrastructure around them to allow them to get those products into the marketplace. Yep. That's the goal, is to generate revenue.
Yeah, and I think we haven't mentioned this. What's really exciting is it doesn't cost anything up front for someone, right? So
that's correct.
Let's talk about, if someone has an idea, let's talk about, what they should do. How do they engage?
Yeah, I think the first step is to contact Startup Spokane. You can come on through our website at www.startupspokane.com, or you can just email us directly at startup@greaterspokane.org. Those are great ways to just connect. Let us know that you want to have a meeting. We will schedule a time to talk to you about your idea and get you moving forward. As we mentioned, the first phase usually isn't jumping right into the rapid commercialization unless you are already really developed and close to launching. Typically, it's going to involve some time investment on the founder's part to do some workshops and attend some different kinds of classes and get some guidance and build them up so that they're ready for the rapid commercialization.
Yeah, and in fact, we should just do a shout out. Back to University of Washington Co-Motion Labs for them helping us with pre-rapid commercialization boot camps, and Spokane Community College, who, again, they've been willing and actually provided recently a full-day boot camp on the Lean Business Model Canvas, because the more information and orientation these entrepreneurs can have coming into the process, the less work it will be on everyone, right? So we want to give them exposure to a lot of these different elements.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really important points, is that, we have to introduce them to and acclimate them to our entire network and our ecosystem of resources. And so by engaging them at the very earliest phase, it makes it a lot easier when you're in operations to reach back out and say, hey, I need a little bit of more support on this. Who do you recommend?
So when we featured this last year, this was still conceptual.
Yes.
We made our huge pivot. We're here now with Mind to Market. The initiative, it's ready to go. We have an investment fund for pre-seed dollars. It's ready to go. So folks, it's now time. If you have an idea that you think has, we call it scaling, right? The ability to grow. We want We want to create the next e-tails. We want to create the next Stay Alfred. We want an entrepreneur with an idea to be able to grow it to the next 50 jobs. So if you think you have an idea, we don't care what industry it's in. It could be Pete Taylor, spiceologist, with spices, to the next bio-life health sciences idea or anything in between. We want you to come to us. Let us and Megan specifically work with you to kind of vet that and see if you're a good candidate for Mind to Market. It doesn't cost you anything up front. At the end, you might actually get somewhere up to $100,000 and that could give you an investment.
And this might be the first step towards making that business a reality and far exceeding $100,000 in revenue.
Yeah, and so we already have great foundation for this. As Megan mentioned before the break, we had 6 companies go through our pilot in the summer that are all teed up and ready now for investment in the next stage. We have I think 15 or so companies ready to start.
We do?
We're ready to start. We're wanting to just create a pipeline of ideas, and 2018 is really going to be the year of commercializing viable and scalable ideas.
Yes, so bring us your ideas. We want to work with you. We want to figure out how to help you achieve the dream that you have.
So we hope you've learned more about our newly pivoted Mind to Market initiative. We hope you'll look into it by reaching out to Startup Spokane at startupspokane.com. Look forward to having you join us on future Broad and podcasts where Megan and I will feature additional support resources, we'll spotlight entrepreneurs, and give you all the information you need so that if you want to launch or grow your next business, you can do it successfully. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Startup Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is a joint effort between GSI's Startup Spokane, Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.